A kind nurse read stories to a millionaire in a coma, but when he suddenly woke up, his first words left her in tears. The soft beeping of machines echoed in the stillness of room 27. The clock on the wall ticked its lonely rhythm, as if keeping time for a soul suspended between life and something else. Emily sat by the bedside, the same chair she had claimed for nearly a year. Her hand, slender and gentle, rested on the unmoving fingers of the man who had become more than just a patient. Liam Callahan, the name once whispered in news headlines, now forgotten in this quiet hospital wing. She had just finished reading The Little Prince, her voice laced with melancholy as she closed the book. It had been Sophie's favorite. "I think that's enough for tonight," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Liam's forehead. Her eyes softened. "You would have liked it too. Or maybe you already do." She stood, reaching for the light switch. Then, a sound. A gasp. A movement. Emily froze. Liam's fingers twitched. Then his eyelids fluttered open. Slowly, uncertainly, like someone waking from a dream he was reluctant to leave. "Liam?" Emily's voice barely escaped her throat. His eyes met hers, and for a moment the world stopped. Those green eyes widened, flooded with disbelief, and shimmered with sudden tears. "Sophie," he whispered, voice raspy and broken. "Sophie, I'm sorry, ma." Before Emily could react, Liam surged upward with surprising strength, arms wrapping tightly around her as his chest heaved in sobs. "Sophie, I thought I lost you. I saw you fall." Emily gasped, paralyzed. Her heart slammed in her chest, her limbs locked in shock. He was hugging her, burying his face in her shoulder, sobbing like a man lost in the dark for far too long. She felt a wave of panic rise from her stomach to her throat. This wasn't happening. He wasn't supposed to wake up like this, and he definitely wasn't supposed to call her that name. I'm not," she stammered, barely audible. "I'm not Sophie." But he didn't hear her. Or maybe he didn't want to. The door slammed open. Nurses rushed in, alerted by the monitor's sudden spike. "Mr. Callahan," one called. "Sir, please, relax, lie down." Two male nurses reached for him, gently but firmly prying him away from Emily. Liam resisted, dazed, clinging to her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. "No, don't take her. She's here. She's alive." Emily backed away quickly, her face pale, her hands shaking uncontrollably. I'm not," she murmured, almost to herself. "Emily, are you okay?" one of the nurses asked, stepping between her and the bed. She nodded shakily, though her breath was ragged. Liam was being eased back onto the bed, eyes wild, tears still streaming down his face. His voice cracked as he kept repeating, softer now, like a prayer. "Sophie, Sophie." Emily didn't wait to hear more. She turned and stumbled out of the room, down the hallway, her legs nearly giving out beneath her. Outside the ICU, she leaned against the cold wall, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of what just happened. The fluorescent lights above her flickered, her vision blurred, her heart thundered in her chest, an impossible blend of fear, sorrow, and something deeper, something old. Why did he say her name? Why did he look at her like that? She slid down the wall and buried her face in her hands, her body trembling. A nurse approached and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You okay, Emily?" She nodded, swallowing hard. He thought I was someone else." "You were the first face he saw after a year in darkness. Don't take it personally. But it wasn't just someone else, it was Sophie. Her sister. The one Emily had lost. The one Liam had loved. And in that moment, Emily knew. Something inside him had never let her go, and something inside her was beginning to remember what it was like to feel again. She looked through the glass window back into room 207, where Liam now lay quietly, staring at the ceiling, lips still mouthing a name carried by grief and time. Emily stepped back, eyes wet. She had no idea what would come next, but she knew this: the story had just begun. Before everything fell apart, Emily Hale was the kind of woman who lit up every room she walked into. She laughed easily, loved fiercely, and moved through the world with a quiet confidence that came from being deeply loved, especially by her older sister, Sophie. Sophie was everything to her, the perfect older sibling, kind, intelligent, fiercely protective. A second mother and a best friend rolled into one. Sophie had been the calm in every storm, the soft voice that told Emily she could survive anything. Then, one rainy November evening, everything shattered. A call came. A truck. A rainy intersection. A crash. Just another unfortunate accident, the police had said. Sophie had died instantly. There was nothing anyone could have done. But Emily never believed that. Not really. There was something wrong, something unfinished in the way it happened. Sophie was too careful, too intuitive. The idea of her dying in a reckless, random accident didn't sit right. And then there was the voicemail, barely audible through static, Sophie's voice trembling. "Em, if anything happens to me, promise me you'll find Liam. He needs to know the truth." The message cut off before she could say more. And Liam Callahan, had vanished from Emily's world the same day Sophie did. Rumors had swirled in tabloids. The wealthy tech CEO disappeared after a tragic loss, perhaps checked into a facility. Some said he had a breakdown. Others whispered darker things, but no one knew the truth. Emily, desperate to escape the ghost-filled apartment and the questions that clawed at her soul, packed up her life and moved to a different city. A fresh start, she told herself. But it wasn't, because fate, or something like it, led her to a hospital just outside the city where she applied for a nursing position, and on her first day in ICU orientation, her heart stopped. Room 207 patient, Liam Callahan, comatose, stable but unresponsive for several months following a car accident. Her hands trembled as she read the chart. The description matched, the timeline, the name. Sophie's Liam, the man she had loved, the man who had disappeared the same day Sophie died. Emily didn't know if it was a coincidence or some cosmic alignment, but she knew one thing. She needed to be close to him. She needed answers. So she requested to be assigned to his care, said she didn't mind long-term cases, said she was good with silent patients. She didn't mention Sophie. She never said the name. From that day forward, Emily became a quiet presence in room 207. At first, she only checked vitals and administered treatments, but eventually silence began to gnaw at her. The room felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by memories, whispers, questions left hanging. So one evening, she brought a book, The Little Prince. It had been Sophie's favorite. She sat by his bedside and began to read aloud, unsure of what compelled her. Perhaps it was her own grief, craving release, or perhaps it was the lingering echo of her sister's voice in that last voicemail. "If anything happens to me, find Liam." Emily didn't know what to say to a man who might never wake up, so she said nothing of herself. She read instead, stories about foxes and stars, about love and loss, about growing up and remembering what matters most. And as the days turned into weeks, then months, she found herself sharing more, between chapters, between silences. She told him about the gardens Sophie loved, about the songs she used to hum when making tea, about how Emily still heard her laughter when it rained. She told him how angry she was, at the world, at fate, at herself, for not asking Sophie more questions, for not seeing the signs, for not being there. Sometimes she swore Liam's fingers twitched when she read. Sometimes the heart monitor beeped a little faster during a particular passage. But there were no miracles. Until the day he opened his eyes, until the moment he looked at her and saw Sophie. Emily still couldn't shake the feel of his arms around her, the way he wept like a man who had been drowning and finally found air. She hadn't told him yet. That she was Emily, not Sophie. That Sophie was gone, that the girl he once loved had died in a crash, and she was all that was left behind. She wasn't ready, and maybe neither was he. So she watched him now, through the glass, from just outside the ICU. He had been sedated again, gently, to help with the shock of waking, but the storm had been unleashed, and Emily knew this wasn't over. This was the beginning of something far more painful than silence. The past had just opened its eyes, and it had called her by the wrong name. The days following Liam's awakening were a haze of half-sedated moments, whispered conversations and shattered memories trying to fit themselves back into place. He lay in his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling for hours. His mind, once razor-sharp and calculating, now felt like broken glass, sharp in places, blank in others. The images that did come were always the same. Sophie's smile, her hand slipping from his, the screech of tires, the silence that followed. He knew what they had told him. The doctors, the newspapers, the police. Accident. Just a tragic, senseless accident, but Liam had never believed it. Not then, not now, not after waking to a face that tore his soul open. It had been nearly a week since that first moment, when he'd opened his eyes and seen her. Sophie. Or at least, someone who looked like her, smelled like her, moved like her, but wasn't her. His outburst had left everyone shaken. He remembered clinging to her, sobbing like a man unhinged, refusing to let go of the ghost he thought had returned. And then the sedation, the soft words, the dimming of the world again. He hadn't seen her since, but Liam couldn't stay in the haze forever. His body was weak, but his thoughts grew sharper with each passing hour, and they all spiraled back to one thing: Sophie. He remembered her eyes the night before she died, haunted, anxious, the way she'd tried to tell him something, but didn't. He remembered the fight they had, the silence that followed, and then the news. But there was more. The last message she left him, deleted now, but still echoing in his mind. If anything happens to me, look into the firm. Someone's hiding something. Now, she was gone, and the woman who looked like her was still here. He needed to see her. 2 more days passed before he gathered enough strength to ask for her. "Emily," he said softly to the nurse on duty, "please, can you ask her to come?" Emily entered the room quietly, her hands clenched at her sides. She hadn't seen Liam since the night he'd woken, mistaking her for Sophie, his heartbreak pouring out in a desperate embrace. Now he looked thinner, but his eyes had lost that panicked edge. There was grief there, yes, but also recognition. "I'm sorry," Liam said as soon as he saw her. His voice was hoarse. "For what happened that night? I didn't mean to scare you." Emily stayed near the door, nodding gently. "You were overwhelmed. It's okay." A long pause stretched between them before Liam finally asked the question that had haunted him since he opened his eyes. "I know you're not her," he said, "but why do you look so much like Sophie?" Emily hesitated, then slowly walked over to the chair beside his bed. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I'm her sister." Liam's breath caught. "Sister?" "I'm Emily Hale. Sophie was my older sister." He stared at her, stunned. "She never mentioned you." "She didn't talk much about family," Emily said softly. "We were close once. Life pulled us apart, but we always found our way back." She paused, then added, "Before she died, she told me, if anything happened, to find you." Liam's eyes fell to the blanket in his lap. "So you came here knowing who I was." "I saw your name on the hospital chart a few months after her funeral," she admitted. "I didn't plan any of this. I just stayed. I thought maybe I could help, or maybe I needed to feel closer to her." Liam closed his eyes. "She's really gone, isn't she?" Emily nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "I always knew it wasn't just an accident," Liam whispered. "Sophie told me something was wrong, that she was being watched." Emily reached across the bed and took his hand. "You're not alone in thinking that. I never believed the story they told us either." That evening, Emily returned to Liam's room with a small, worn notebook in her hands. "She gave this to me," she said, 2 weeks before she died." Liam took it with care, his fingers brushing over the cover as if it were sacred. Inside, Sophie's handwriting spilled across the pages, at first gentle, then more urgent, darker. "He's hiding something. I saw the documents. If Liam finds out, he'll be in danger too. I think someone is watching me. The same car again. I can't trust Martin. I think he knows." Liam stiffened. "Martin? Who's that?" Emily asked. "My CFO. My best friend since college. Sophie never liked him, but I thought she was being protective." Emily leaned forward. "Do you think he had something to do with the accident?" Liam took a long moment before answering. "The day before she died, she told me she had proof. Something about someone betraying me. She wouldn't say who." His voice faltered. "That was the last time I saw her." Emily gently laid her hand over his. "Then a few days later, you crash." "It wasn't just a crash," Liam said, eyes dark. "The brakes failed. I heard something click before I lost control. But the investigation blamed the weather." "And while you were in a coma?" Emily asked quietly. "Martin took over, replaced board members, sold off divisions, diluted my shares. He buried me and erased her." Emily's voice trembled. "And Sophie was trying to stop him." "She died for it," Liam said bitterly, "and I nearly did too." A heavy silence fell between them. Rain tapped against the windows, soft and persistent. "My parents accepted the official story," Emily said. "They needed to, but I never did. Sophie wasn't reckless, and she wouldn't go quiet." Liam turned to look at her. "We can still find the truth. Her notebook, her fears. They were messages, and now we have each other." He looked into her eyes, not searching for Sophie anymore, but seeing Emily clearly. "I don't know what's ahead," he said, "but if there's even a chance to bring this to light, we owe it to her." Emily nodded, eyes brimming. "We do." And in that shared silence, something unspoken passed between them. Not just grief, not just resolve, but a quiet understanding. They weren't just survivors of loss. They were the keepers of Sophie's story, and they were ready to finish it. It began quietly, like most truths do. Between the turning of pages, the hum of machines, and the silent exchange of glances that said, "We're ready now." Emily returned to Liam's room the next morning with a small box, no larger than a shoebox, worn with age and held together with a red ribbon. "This is all I have left of her," she said softly, placing it on his lap. "Her journals, her flash drives, a few notes she kept hidden. I didn't have the strength to go through it before, but now." Liam looked at her, the weight of gratitude and sorrow etched into every line on his face. "Now we do it together." Inside the box was Sophie's life in fragments. Dozens of scribbled pages, printouts of financial documents with cryptic annotations in the margins, and 3 USB drives. Emily pulled out one of the journals and flipped to a page she had bookmarked. "She mentions a man named Gregory Shaw here," she explained. "Executive VP at Callahan Tech. Sophie wrote that she saw him accepting an envelope in the parking garage. She thought it was a bribe." Liam's eyes narrowed. "Greg Shaw's been with the company for years, loyal to Martin. But if Sophie had proof..." They scanned the journal for more. There were references to accounts Sophie couldn't access, numbers that didn't add up, meetings that weren't on official calendars. Most damning was a sentence scribbled near the bottom of a page. "GS/17 parking garage envelope. Martin's name whispered." Liam's hand clenched the journal. "That's the day before she died." Emily pulled out one of the USB drives. "I don't know what's on here. I haven't plugged it in." Liam gestured to the hospital tray table. "Let's find out." Emily connected the drive to her laptop, heart pounding. The folder opened with only 3 files. One was a document labeled, "For Liam." The other 2 were video files. 10 minutes matching the dates in the journal. She clicked on the first video. A grainy feed appeared, security footage from what looked like a parking structure. At the bottom, the date. November 17th. 2 men stood near a black SUV, one handing the other an envelope. The camera zoomed slightly as the man receiving the envelope looked around nervously, his face turned toward the camera. Gregory Shaw. The video cut out. Emily and Liam sat frozen. "She caught him," Liam breathed. "She really caught him in the act." "And the envelope?" Emily asked. "It could have been anything, but her notes, she clearly suspected something bigger." Liam nodded. She was planning to bring this to me. And then... He didn't need to finish. Emily opened the second video file. It was taken from inside a car, likely Sophie's. The view shook slightly, but the voices were audible. "You shouldn't be following me," Sophie's voice said, sharp with fear. A male voice responded, low and hard. "You need to back off, Sophie. You're in over your head. Does Liam know?" Hollander. He's not your concern anymore. He deserves to know the truth." The video ended abruptly. Emily closed the laptop, her hands trembling. She knew she was being threatened. Liam's jaw clenched. And she recorded everything. She was trying to protect us. His voice grew distant. "I should have listened. She told me she had something to show me, and I dismissed it, told her to wait until Monday. She never made it to Monday." Emily reached out and took his hand. "You didn't know. No one did." "But now we do," he said, eyes burning with resolve. "And I'm not letting them bury this." That evening, Liam made a call from a private hospital line. He spoke in hushed tones, then hung up with a curt nod. "His name is Daniel Reeves," Liam explained. "My original lawyer, one of the few people I trust. He stepped away after the accident when Martin took over everything. But he's still loyal." 2 days later, Daniel arrived at the hospital. Grayer, thinner, but sharp as ever. After hearing the full story and reviewing the evidence, his face grew pale. "I knew Martin was ambitious," Daniel said, "but I didn't think he'd go this far." "Can we build a case?" Emily asked. Daniel nodded. "If we can authenticate these videos and trace financial transactions tied to Greg Shaw, yes. But it won't be easy. These men are powerful and paranoid." "We have to try," Liam said. "For Sophie." Emily pulled out the letter labeled "For Liam" and handed it to him. With trembling hands, he opened it. "Liam, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything sooner. I wanted to protect you. But I realize now that silence is what keeps evil alive. The people you trusted have betrayed you. I know this will break your heart, but I hope it also gives you the strength to fight back. You were always stronger than you believed. Trust Emily. She's braver than I ever was. I'll always love you. Sophie." Liam closed his eyes, pressing the letter to his chest. Emily leaned in, whispering, "We're not alone in this." And for the first time in a long time, Liam believed her. They had the truth. They had each other. And they had just begun to fight. The morning the story broke, the world shifted. It began with a headline, "Whistleblower's Death Linked to Executive Corruption at Callahan Tech." Within hours, it was everywhere. News sites, television anchors, online forums. The public devoured the story, stunned by the revelations and hungry for more. But behind every detail was the pain of two people who had fought in silence for the truth. Liam sat in a conference room surrounded by lawyers, investigators, and media consultants. The walls were covered with press releases and case summaries, but all he could hear was Sophie's voice in the letter she left for him. He clutched her words in his pocket as if they were armor. Across from him, Daniel Reeves, his old lawyer, nodded solemnly. "Are you ready?" Liam breathed deeply. More than ever. The case had built itself, brick by painful brick. Emily's discovery of Sophie's journal had been the start, but it was the financial trail that sealed the coffin. Bank statements, shell company transfers, and falsified reports, all linked back to Martin Rhodes, Liam's former best friend and chief operating officer. It was Martin who had grown jealous. Martin who had siphoned money through backdoor channels. And Martin who had ordered Sophie's death when she got too close. The parking garage footage of Gregory Shaw accepting a bribe was one thing, but the real damning evidence came from a whistleblower inside the company who, after seeing the news leak, came forward anonymously with an audio recording of Martin's conversation just days before Sophie's accident. "She knows too much. I don't care how it's done. Just make sure she disappears, and make it look clean." It was impossible to misinterpret. Sophie hadn't died in a freak accident. She had been silenced, and Liam had almost been the second casualty. The press conference at the Grand Regency Hotel was packed. Reporters, flashing cameras, murmuring tension. Just 2 years ago, this venue had hosted the launch of Callahan Tech's most successful product. Now, it was the stage for something entirely different. Liam walked slowly to the podium, his cane tapping softly with each step. Gone was the fragile man in a hospital bed. He wore a sharp black suit, his face leaner, older, etched with the loss of time, love, and trust. The room fell silent as he began. "Good morning," he said, voice calm but carrying weight. "I stand here today not only as the former CEO of Callahan Tech, but as a man who almost lost everything, because I trusted the wrong people." Cameras flashed. "A year ago, my fiancée, Sophie Hale, died in what was believed to be a tragic accident. Days later, I was in a coma from a car crash of my own. While I lay unconscious, those closest to me took everything, my company, my name, and most unforgivable of all, Sophie's truth." Whispers rippled across the room. But Sophie wasn't just brave. She was prepared. She left behind evidence. And because of those who believed in her, the truth has come to light. Martin Rhodes is under arrest, Gregory Shaw is being investigated, and Callahan Tech will be restructured under new leadership. The applause began softly, growing louder as Liam paused, scanning the crowd. His gaze landed on Emily, standing at the back, half hidden, her eyes shimmering with pride and emotion. "I would not be standing here today if it weren't for someone very special," he continued. "Someone who sat by my side when no one else believed I'd return, who read me stories in the dark when I couldn't respond, who refused to give up." He smiled. "To Emily Hale, I owe more than my life. I owe my strength, my clarity, and the courage to speak this truth." Emily covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. "She's the reason justice found its way home. And to Sophie, wherever you are, I hope you know, we heard you, and we answered." The room broke into applause. Some reporters wiped their eyes. Liam stepped down, nodding to officers preparing Martin's public arrest. For the world, it was about justice. For Liam, it was about Sophie and Emily, and the fragments of love that somehow stitched themselves back together. That evening, Liam and Emily stood on the rooftop garden of the hospital. The sun was setting, painting gold across the horizon. "Did you mean it?" Emily asked. "About hearing me read?" Liam nodded. "Not the words, exactly, but the feeling, like someone was holding on, and I followed that voice home." Emily looked down, overwhelmed. "I thought I lost both of you." He turned to her, gently. "You didn't. You saved me." He reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. Justice had been served. The ghosts were at rest, and from what was broken, something whole had begun. Weeks passed. The world kept moving. Media headlines faded, company shares shifted, but Sophie's name remained, no longer buried under whispers. Liam found something unexpected in the aftermath, not revenge, healing. He wrote. Most days he worked in a quiet corner of the hospital's rehab wing, turning pain into prose. On his laptop glowed the title, "The Girl Who Whispered in the Dark." It was Sophie's story, but also his, and Emily's. She sat across from him, red pen in hand, glasses slipping down her nose. "You spelled serendipity wrong. Again," he chuckled. "Creative license." Emily smiled. "You're lucky you're charming. I get that a lot." She looked at him, not as a patient or a lost man, but as someone who had finally come back to life. "You really think people will read it?" Liam asked. "I think they need to," Emily replied. "It's about truth over fear and love that lingers, even when someone's gone." Liam looked down. "I think I'm also telling the story of a man who got lost, and the woman who brought him back." Emily stilled, her heart catching. Then, softly, Liam asked, "Do you ever think, if Sophie had lived, we never would have met?" She nodded. "Yes, I think about that." "And does it ever feel wrong that something so beautiful could grow from so much pain?" She shook her head. "I used to think feeling anything but grief was betrayal. But I'm not forgetting her. I'm carrying her. With every step forward," Liam's eyes shimmered. "She was always the brave one," Emily continued. "I stayed in her shadow, but if she'd lived, I don't think I would have found the courage to fight. or to love." He reached for her hand. "You didn't stay behind," he said. "You stepped forward. When I couldn't, you kept me alive." She blinked, tears threatening. "I just didn't want you to be alone," she whispered. "I'm not," he said. Silence lingered, but now it was warm. Then, gently, Liam asked, "When this is over, when I'm discharged, would you consider staying?" Emily raised a brow. "At the hospital?" "No," he said. "With me." Her heart leapt. "I'm not asking for more than what you're ready for," he added. "But I'd like to see where this goes, to see who we might become." She looked into his eyes, not for Sophie but for Liam, and she smiled. "I'll stay," she said, "for now, and maybe longer." And in that quiet room, where pain had once lingered loudest, something new took root, not to replace the past, but to honor it. Together, word by word, page by page, they began a new chapter. The cemetery was quiet that morning. A soft wind moved through the trees, rustling leaves like whispered prayers. Birds sang faintly in the distance, and the city felt far away, forgotten, irrelevant. Liam and Emily stood side by side, their coats buttoned tight against the crisp air, their hands intertwined as if letting go might pull them apart again. In front of them stood a headstone, simple and elegant. Sophie Hale, beloved daughter, sister, and dreamer. Her voice became our compass. At the base of the grave, nestled among fresh white lilies, sat a small hardcover book. Its title was embossed in silver script, "Between Two Worlds, How My Sister Saved Us Both." Emily crouched down gently, brushing a stray leaf from the cover before placing it on the marble. "She would have rolled her eyes at the title," she said softly, a small smile curving her lips. Liam chuckled under his breath, and secretly loved it. They stood there in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. Around them, life went on. Cars passed in the distance. A lawnmower buzzed somewhere down the hill, but within the quiet circle around Sophie's grave, it was just them. And her. "I think she knew," Liam finally said. "I think that's why she told you to find me." Emily glanced over at him. "Because she wanted you to finish the book?" "No," he said, looking at her fully. "Because she knew I'd need someone to help me keep living." Emily's throat tightened. She looked back at the grave, blinking against the mist in her eyes. "I used to think she was everything I wasn't," she murmured. "Brave, bold, bright. I always felt like I was standing in her shadow." "She didn't cast shadows," Liam said gently. "She created light. You've just finally let it shine through you, too." Emily didn't reply right away. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. It showed the three of them, Sophie in the middle, her arms around Emily and Liam, laughing with her whole heart. She placed it next to the book. "I wish she could see us now," she whispered. "She does," Liam said, squeezing her hand. A breeze stirred, fluttering the corner of the photograph. After a long moment, Liam turned to her, eyes tender but resolute. "Emily, I'm not sure if what we have now is the beginning of something new or the continuation of something we never got to finish." Emily's eyes met his, steady. "But I know this," he said. "I don't want to lose you again. Not in this life, not in any." Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet, graceful. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers brushing his jaw like the softest promise. "Then don't," she said, her voice trembling but full of certainty, "because this time, I'm not going anywhere." Liam smiled, really smiled, and pulled her into a gentle embrace. They stood there for a long time, holding each other in front of the woman who had brought them together, and whose memory would never be a wall between them, but a bridge. As they turned to leave, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light over the cemetery. Emily looked over her shoulder once more. "Goodbye, Sophie," she said quietly. "Thank you for everything." Liam's arms slipped around her shoulders. Together they walked down the stone path, step by step, heart by heart, into the uncertain but beautiful world waiting ahead, not forgetting, but healing, not replacing, but rebuilding. Between two worlds, love had found a way, and so, from pain bloomed purpose. From silence a voice was heard. and from loss, love found its way back. In a world often broken by grief, this story reminds us that healing comes not always in grand gestures, but in quiet moments of courage, in words whispered across hospital beds, and in the strength it takes to begin again. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to become part of our growing community. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, where every week we bring you true tales of love, resilience, and the human spirit. Because sometimes, all it takes is one story to change the way we see the world. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and keep your heart open.